in their coffins with their writings and their treasures and everything that are there. It is a testament that they did live and die at some point, and they have correlated most of the kings that they found in the Valley of the Kings with the chronology that Manetho was supposed to have given. They found the tombs to validate that.
The tombs are there, but you cannot use Manetho for anything but an incarnated name created by the Europeans to write through. Okay? The tombs are there. That has nothing to do with the actuality or the reality of the tombs being there and the ancient Egyptians being there. The ancient Egyptians did not write a chronology of themselves. If so, it was done in pictorial form. And those pictures are called meta-nature hieroglyphics that have never been deciphered. And see, you have to understand that the ancient Egyptians never wrote a history of themselves. That's very, very clean, very clear.
Okay, then let's talk about, because we've dealt with that whole period now, the falsification, the creation of a history, where we can see now how one can put themselves in history. But let's begin to look at the Europeans themselves and talk about it. Perhaps you can explain, when does the European impact the ancient Egyptians? I mean, we talk about the Mayans. I'm looking at this book, and they talk about the Mayans, and they take Greece back to the year 2000, and they give a chronology of Greece, beginning with the Mayans and bringing all the way up to this great and marvelous civilization that they built.
What they call the Minoan civilization. Suppose they started on the island that's called Crete today.
Correct.
Okay? The ancient Egyptians lived on that island, because that's right in the Mediterranean, so many miles from Egypt. Okay? The ancient Egyptians lived in Greece and brought a high civilization in Greece before the Greeks came into Greece. See, the Greeks that are known today, or the people that are known today as the Greeks, came out of Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Albania, Hungary, etc., into Greece at a certain time. But prior to that, the ancient Egyptians created a high civilization over there. They call that civilization the Mycenaean civilization. The Greeks and the Romans are one and the same. The Roman Greeks migrated into the country that's known as Italy, but the ancient Egyptians created a high civilization prior to these Roman Greeks getting over there, and they are calling that civilization the Etruscan civilization. These are names that are used to camouflage the true identity and the true glory and the true history of the ancient Egyptians. Etruscans, Mycenaeans, Minoans, etc., etc. Okay? With these names, they can attach all kinds of stories to it and write up certain things in books to take you away from the ancient Egyptian, or the glorification of the ancient Egyptian. You mentioned about the Greeks in 200 BC having a form of civilization. That's not true, simply because you cannot have a civilization coming from anybody who does not have a writing system. The Greeks never had a form of writing. They never had an alphabet. So during the time of antiquity, there's never been an institution that ever came out of Greece. If one argued against that, then you name me what institution that came out of Greece during the time of antiquity. The ancient Egyptians were invaded by the Greeks under Alexander the Greek in 332 BCE. That was the first time in world history that a European ever came in contact with the ancient Egyptians in Egypt, in Africa. And that's where all of it began from that point, coming up to 1999.
Were the Persians Europeans?
Never been a Persian to be a European.
So you're saying that whole thing about the Persians is a lie?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's
see what they're trying to do is to, like I told you before, all history is written to establish and sustain a Jew in biblical literature in human form. That's how they write it up. Okay? Now, they create a Persian out of a Cyrus II the Great, okay, who was supposed to be a Persian king who rescued the Jews out of Babylon in 587 and took them back and sent them back into Judea to build their second temple. This is all biblical. It said Nebuchadnezzar took the Jews out of Judea and put them into slavery into Babylon. And Cyrus II the Great came along, who was a Persian king, came along and freed them from this bondage in 587. You see that? So now they need a Persian of any kind to try to sustain this pseudo story of this lie that is told about Jews and this concocted history that they have created. So there's never been any Persians. See, if you go to a book or go to the Encyclopedia Judaica, it's your nearest library, and you look up the Great Synagogue in there, in the literature that's called the Great Synagogue, you know what they tell you in that literature? They know nothing about no Persians. See? You see?
I just want to jump ahead because okay.